Good afternoon, everyone. It's Alan Murabayashi and Sarah Jacobs joining you for another I Love Photography live. Good afternoon, Sarah.
Hi, good afternoon.
This is like the nicest weather we've had in like all year.
I know. Thank God it's spring.
And thank God we're inside talking about photography. We should have done our first outside broadcast.
That would have been fun. We should do that sometime.
Yeah. We'll figure out, well, if we can ever figure out how to really streamline this thing.
Yeah. Let's figure that out first.
Yeah, let's figure that out. I've decided that we should always start with a little bit of hard news instead of just talking about pretty photos. And there's nothing wrong with talking about pretty photos, but we'll start with the hard news since you brought it up.
I did.
This being sort of the criticism of the White House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why
don't you break that down for us?
Basically, the Obama administration doesn't want press or photographers coming in to a lot of their events that they have and newsworthy things that he does. And they don't let AP photographers, AP White House photographers, such as Julie and Charles, in. And AP, it's interesting because I don't see this news really outside of my photography sources. Like, the only reason I know that this happens, that they don't let these photographers in, is because of photography news. And it keeps bubbling up, and we've talked about it before, and I'm glad it keeps bubbling up, the fact that this is going on, and that Pete Souza,
Yep.
Is really the main guy, and AP is kind of like, hey, you're producing propaganda almost.
Well, so he is he's the chief White House photographer, but he doesn't set policy, and I think so.
Right.
Some of the criticism that we see about Pete, who also served as the photographer for Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like he's got an ideological agenda based on political sides, which side of political spectrum. He sees himself as doing a job, and it is a little strange because he is a photojournalist. He was working as a photojournalist before he got this gig.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a little strange. Now, you mentioned that it keeps bubbling up a little bit.
A little bit.
I was thinking in the shower this morning about this problem, and it's kind of an academic issue, unfortunately. Like, the average person has no idea about ethics of photojournalism. The average person doesn't know that the bulk of, not the bulk, but many news articles out there by lesser magazines that have poor budgets and not great writers are basically regurgitations of press releases.
Mm.
So when AP Santiago Leon, who's the head of AP, says, well, these are visual press releases. This is propaganda. Yeah, and unfortunately, not that many people care.
Right.
So I saw Doug Mills, who works for the New York Times. I saw his comments back in December when this kind of blew up again. And when Obama went to South Africa, I saw all this stuff. I guess part of the disappointment is that the administration said they were going to be very transparent, and they're not.
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad the photojournalists are, trying to stick it to them.
Right. But I think that it's kind of a losing battle because it doesn't affect the general public. I mean, you can make the academic argument that it affects the general public because what they're seeing is this very idealized view of the White House and idealized view of Obama. So they're getting a sanitized view, but the general public cares more about, did they find the plane yet, and when is Frozen coming out on DVD? That's what the general public cares about.
Right. That's true.
So I would love to have a discussion with some of the players. I'd love to get Kenny Irby from Pointer. I'd love to get Santiago Leon in for a hangout and talk to them about this issue. I just don't know that it's going to be anything that is sort of addressed until the next president comes along and says, okay, that sucked. Let's have more press access.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I hope that's the case.
Yeah, definitely. In the meantime, Pete's doing a great job of idealized photos of Obama. I mean, I think he's a great photographer. I just wish that there was more access, and hopefully we'll continue this conversation again.
Yeah.
Well, that was the hard news portion of it. Why don't we talk about 900 megapixel portraits?
Oh man, yes. Yes, Swiss photographer Daniel Boyschung. He takes these incredible 900 megapixel portraits. He puts his sitters in this like dental looking chair. It's very strange. And he takes 600 images of each person's face. And it's done by an ABB robot, which I was like, what in the world is an ABB robot? Look it up. Apparently it's the leading supplier of industrial robots. Did you know that, Alan? I did not know that.
I did not know that. I was not aware of that.
I was not either, but he uses a Canon 5D Mark II, and he's using an 180 macro lens, and it takes about 30 minutes to photograph these people. And I mean, he's getting every pore, every hair, every blackhead. I mean, it's gross.
So here's my, I always have an issue with something.
Right. What's the issue?
And I know that he's compositing them.
Right.
As pure portraits, they just don't do it for me.
Yes.
You know, they're not like well lit. When you think of like great contemporary portraiture, like this guy's not going to be on the list. When you think of great technical achievement, this guy will be near the top of the list. Yes.
Somebody who needs to use this technology and create better portraits. I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other issue is like nobody's going to want to gigapan your face.
No, I don't.
With that level of detail, you know, and unless the thing is blown up, 12 feet high, and you're literally 6 inches away from it, there's not going to be that much difference than taking it with like a D800.
Oh, yeah. True. That's true.
So, I'm all for pushing the envelope. I just don't know if there was an exhibit of this photography that I would go see it. But maybe that's just me.
You don't want to look at the pores?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Speaking of technical achievement, over on the popphoto.com website, we have some of the first samples I've seen of the new Nikon D4S, which has a top ISO of 409,600.
That's insane.
Now, remember when you would like push 1600 film, or if you're feeling really risky, you'd get like Agfa 3200. I mean, you're too young to even know this, but okay, so we'd buy like Agfa 3200, and then maybe we'd push it a stop to like 6400 or something like that, and you'd have to give it another extra minute, and the developer, blah blah blah.
Yeah. No, I've done that. Yeah.
And now think of like how regularly I shoot at 6400, like not even thinking about it. I just shoot at 6400. It's not a problem. And this thing shoots order of magnitude more, 400,000 ISO. Now, granted, it looks like crap.
It does. It looks like early on digital work.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really noisy.
But now, look at this one.
Okay.
This one is 100,000 ISO, and it's usable for the web. That's like usable.
Totally.
So, the ISO 400,000 is outside of the normal boundary. You know how they have that +1 or whatever they call it. When it says the sensor's not in bounds. But this is like crazy. And man, if I could shoot regularly at like 10,000, because I go out at night and I take my camera, and I don't always have like a prime lens on it with a 1.4. I go out with my zoom lens, my Nikon 24-70 at 2.8. It's a couple stops of light right there. So I'd gladly shoot at 100,000 or 10,000 or whatever. And the other thing is, I was at the Northern Short Course this weekend, and I got to pick up this camera. And they did something funky where they re-angled the shutter. And as a result of that, you know how when the shutter deploys and you get that little bit of blackout in the viewfinder?
Yeah.
And it blacks out for just a millisecond?
Yeah.
It's so short in this new camera that it's almost imperceptible. So that when you're motoring at 11 frames per second, which it does, it's like you can still see through the viewfinder. It's a little nutty, this technology.
That's awesome. You gonna get one?
I thought about it. I just don't. If I shot sports, it would make sense, but
Yeah.
considering I shoot what I'm eating,
It's
I don't
staying very
know
still.
that I need. Yeah, I don't know that I need that camera, but it's lovely. If price was no object, I would definitely get it. But unfortunately, at $6,500, price is an object.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how you go onto Facebook and you upload some photos, and then there are all these suggestions for tagging, like, did you want to tag Sarah Jacobs in this photo?
Freaks me out every time.
It's a little unnerving.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, Facebook purchased an Israeli technology company a few years ago called Face.com. And Face.com has been working on their little algorithm. And here's an article from Gizmodo talking about how Facebook's facial recognition, this is not what they use on Facebook, this is what their scientists are doing back in the lab, is approaching human level performance. So they're at like 97.25% accuracy on facial detection, and humans operate at 97.5.
Wow.
So that's kind of insane. Also when you think about the fact that the computer can work thousands or millions times faster than a human. Now Facebook has said that they're not going to use this in Facebook, at least not yet.
Well, I hope they find better use for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's concern, obviously, about privacy and being able to find photos of people that, like if you were stalking someone, you don't want to have access to this technology.
Right.
On the other hand, I would love to have this on my desktop when I'm like, it's Sarah's birthday coming up. I want to find all the photos I have of Sarah. I would love to have this.
Okay.
Because Sarah, I don't tag all my photos of you.
Right. Well, and I untag a lot of them.
Well, yeah, and I'm saying in my own Lightroom archive, I'm not going in and adding metadata that this photo contained Sarah Jacobs.
Right.
So if it could automatically do it.
Why do you think Facebook is making a technology like this? I mean, it's just to sell it, right? Or what do you?
No, I think eventually it'll make their way. I think obviously as we're finding out, search is like everything. When you have a ton of data, search is everything.
Uh-huh.
And if you can own things like facial detection and visual detection, like I'm looking at a plant, this is this kind of plant, and now the Wikipedia article comes up for it without relying on text search, that's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Or imagine like you're a photojournalist and now you don't have to caption your photos. You don't have to ID things because the technology is there. Let's say the AP licenses this, and they build their own data bank of faces, and that gets kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, a lot of technology. I mean, not so many photos that we're looking at this week, but we do have a lot of technology. Apple apparently is going to build in, allegedly, gyroscopic optical image stabilization. So instead of relying on digital stabilization, which they've done in the past, to kind of make things look less jittery, they have this in the 5S. It's a gyroscope, it's like a Steadicam in your iPhone.
Wow.
And this photo up here of the Lido dinner menu is showing you.
Prime example.
Yeah, prime example. Look how sharp it is on the left there.
Is this the person shaking the iPhone while they're taking this picture?
Yeah, I assume it's like low light. The shutter's open a little bit longer.
Okay.
Who knows? But that, low light is the bummer of digital.
Yep.
Unless you have like one of these newfangled cameras, low light is always makes a great digital photo look like crap. Well, here's another interesting one that I liked, which was Apple apparently working on a threaded thing on the back of the iPhone so that you can screw on attachments to your iPhone. That's kind of cool, huh?
Yeah.
No, really. You're not going to put it in your pocket. But I have seen people who sort of walk around with these things and then they clip on, and then you don't know if it's going to fall off. And then
Right.
you're working on positioning them.
Yeah.
So, but it is funny how, we try to make everything miniature, and then we find that maybe miniature isn't that great because we want to have things like optical zoom or optical telephoto rather than digital telephoto,
Right, right. And have it be high quality.
and
Yep.
have it be high quality, right?
Yeah.
So, but I like the idea that something as simple as adding some threads to the thing would help a new ecosystem of attachments for your iPhone.
So you
Because,
carry that around.
well, no, I would never carry that around. No, I'm all about having the most slender phone. The big question for me is when they come out with a 4.7-inch iPhone or a 5-inch iPhone, will that fit in my pocket?
Oh, big concerns.
Might have to get baggier pants. Can't wear the slim jeans.
Right. No more skinny jeans. No.
No more skinny jeans. Here's the last iPhone accessory we found. This is the Stanford University develops a $90 iPhone accessory to replace ophthalmology kits costing tens of thousands of dollars. Now this is great technology. This
Yeah.
is what I'm talking about,
Yep.
right? You solve a problem, you make it super cheap, everyone's got their smartphone, you hook this up. Now on the other hand, if I went to my eye doctor in New York City and he pulled out his iPhone and this contraption, maybe I'd be like, really? Am I paying a $50 copay for this? But if I'm in a third world country and my eye is falling out and the doctor pulls this out, I'm probably pretty psyched.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. If it brings better medical care to more people, if it increases access for a cheaper amount of money, then I'm all for it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this whole drone thing,
Quadcopter, Alan.
quadcopters, octocopters, that's right. We got scolded from Eric Chang for
We
calling them
did.
drones,
We
right?
did, yes.
So quadcopter, octocopter. So I guess the dealio was this. In 2007, the FAA came out with a statement. I don't know what the legal term is. They came out with a statement that said you cannot operate a drone, a quadcopter. You can operate an unmanned aircraft, of which a quadcopter drone would fall into that category, for commercial purposes without having an FAA license. And apparently the only license that they handed out for regular use was like a drone that flies over Antarctica.
Oh.
So that was before the whole DJI quadcopter revolution. So now all of a sudden technology comes out with $400 drones or however much they cost. They're a few $100s up to thousands of dollars. This guy flies his little, and it wasn't even a drone, this guy. The guy flew an aircraft, Raphael Perker. It was like an airplane-shaped thing over a crowd, and he was fined $10,000 for being unsafe and breaking this rule, etc. So he goes to court. The judge rules that the FAA ruling is no good. So all the drone operators rejoice. Yay, we can fly it. FAA, NTSB, blah 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 blah. And then the FAA appeals. This was like last week. The FAA appealed the judgment, which basically took it from a clarified position of, yeah, you can fly it without a license, back to the old ambiguous judgment of, we don't know. You take your chances. And I guess the intent is that the FAA is supposed to come out with rules or guidelines by the end of the year. In the meantime, this whole explosion of quadcopters and octocopters is happening. So it's sort of like operate them at your own expense.
Yeah, that's true. You shared the Washington Nationals, if you want to pull that up.
Yeah, it's a great photo. So Donald Morale, who's a friend of ours, went to spring training, and this reminded me, Vince LaFerrari, when he was at the Times, took that picture of the ice skaters, and it was kind of a late light, and the shadows that were casting made them look like people.
Mm.
That photo was called Me and My Shadow. Well, here's Donald Morale's version of that.
Yeah.
What a great photo.
Yeah, this is beautiful. This gets me excited about quadcopter photography or video, Because everything I've seen, yeah, it's nice. Oh, like landscapes and animals and okay, cool. This I watched and this still from it, I just love it. I love it.
So this is shot a DJI Phantom with a GoPro camera. It's not even, a fancy camera. But
Wow,
again,
yeah.
it's good light, so who cares? The sensor's fine for good light, and it's a fantastic photo. I would buy a copy of this photo.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
anyway, he did this at the National Spring Training, and then the next day the FAA told him to stop. But I thought the precious part of it was when they were talking to the Nationals. Uh, the Nationals manager says, what did you get permission to fly the quadcopter? And I don't know whether it was the manager or the PR guy. He said something to the effect of, "No, we didn't, but we also don't get permits for our fly balls, because they're operating at the same height."
that's a great response.
Yeah, and I thought that sort of perfectly summed up the issue of, with the FAA really lagging behind the times in this. I understand, I understand it's hard to create policy around new technology. But, I look at something like having to turn off our phones when we take off because they were afraid that my Kindle would take down the plane.
Gosh.
And it took them 10 years. I've had a Kindle for 8 years or whatever. And
Oh.
I mean, really? It took 8 years to come up with a policy that says I don't have to power down my Kindle?
They
So
just want you
FAA,
to
let's
pay
get up.
attention. I know. But, they're looking out for everybody's safety. It makes sense that they need to put a policy in place.
Yeah, insert Malaysia Airlines joke now about all the good that did it, right?
Mm.
So we often talk about the role of photography and how it can open your eyes to stuff that's going around, particularly with photojournalism. You talk about that Eddie Adams photo. You talk about the Nick Ut Napalm Girl photo, really changing the direction of policy and public sentiment. When I was at the Northern Short Course this past weekend in Warwick, Rhode Island, it was a great show, by the way. Eugene Richards presented, among other great people that were presenting.
Oh, wow.
But
He's intense.
he's intense.
Just like his work. It makes
The
sense.
photos are so good,
Oh, of course, yeah.
Marianne Gallone, who's a friend, who's now the director of photography over at the Washington Post, showed us a piece that they did on refugees from the Syrian war. And the Syrian war has been particularly brutal. But here's a pretty cool piece, and look at the way this opens. So it's all of this animation of all these refugees, and then it zooms out to create the face from one of the portraits.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful.
So that's really. And so they sent out a reporter and a photographer out there, and they created a series of portraits that they actually presented as diptychs. So hopefully we can pull this one up here. And it was just, so here's a great shallow depth of field portrait on the left, and then this girl who was caught with some shrapnel. So you get sort of the portrait and the environment. And I just thought this was such great photography. Linda Davidson is the photographer here from the Washington Post. Yeah, they went out, they found their fixer, they went out, they took all these photos, they put it together in this special package. Really great stuff. And then I was looking over at In Focus with Alan Taylor, and I couldn't believe the war has been going on for 3 years.
Yeah.
And look at all those people. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
War is tragic. And I think it was Louis Palou, a great war photographer, friend of PhotoShelter, was talking about war photography, and he's been everywhere, Afghanistan and whatnot. And one of the questions at the end was, war photography can sometimes make sort of romanticize war, because particularly in some parts of Afghanistan, where you have these beautiful vistas and these poppy fields and the soldiers walking across. I think that was the point of view of the question asker. And he said, how do you reconcile the fact that it can look beautiful at times. And Louis said, "There's nothing beautiful about war." And he just kept reiterating, "There's nothing, you can think all you want. There's nothing beautiful about war." And I was like, "Yeah, man, that's right."
Yeah.
So I'm looking at like these Syrian photos, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's really kind of mind blowing."
Well, I feel like that's the great thing about the Washington Post article, where they are pairing, these beautiful portraits that
Yeah.
are simple and beautiful, and then putting them next to the environmental as a clear reminder that, yeah, war is not beautiful. These people are, but their situation is not. It's very powerful.
Yeah. And so Louis is running, and I wish I had the URL in front of me, but he has I think it's conflictphotographyworkshop.com or something like that. You can Google his name, Louis Palu, Palu. But they run a 1-week course for photographers who are interested in this type of stuff. And they do like battle simulations where they're like firing, blanks at you, and you're crawling and you're trying to get the photo, etc. But in his presentation, when we had the Boston bombing, John Klumacki had that photo of the guy in the wheelchair with his leg blown off, and a bunch of news outlets sort of censored that because it was so graphic. Louis, in his presentation, had video and photos of soldiers in Afghanistan who stepped on IEDs or landmines or were in IED things, and it was the same old stuff, man. Legs blown off, and I was like, oh my gosh. The photos that we get sort of in the mainstream media are so sanitized from the war. Like I think it really does change your opinion about war and your support of war when you see like a 20-year-old kid with his leg blown off and he's just like moaning.
Right, and that explains that person asking that question. Do you feel like it glorifies it, or to him, he's not seeing all the unedited images.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So a lot to think about from that. And then moving on to like portraits of dolls. People dolled up. Let's go back and forth. What do we got?
Oh, I haven't seen this Laurie Simmons work. No.
Oh, this wasn't you.
No, it was not.
Oh, well, I don't know where it came from, so let's not talk about it.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about it next week because it's relatively new.
All right. Yeah. No,
but that's okay.
Amazing.
I've got 2 other ones that I love. So this one I just saw in my Facebook feed, and this is an older article, but I thought it was fun. So this is from July 16th, 2012. They're claiming that this image, which is the old background graphic from Windows.
Yeah. I mean, I recognized it immediately.
Right? Windows XP Luna theme. It's a photo. It's not. A lot of people thought it was like created in the computer, because obviously it's saturated. The sky is obviously not that blue. It doesn't have that shade of blue. But the photographer is Charles O'Rear. A photo called Bliss, and I think he wasn't paid very much for it. But at any rate, they're saying that this might be the most seen photo ever.
Wow.
Like billions of views, because every time you turn on your computer, you're seeing this photo. And O'Rear is saying, you show this to a person in the U.S., in rural China, astronauts on the ISS, the White House Situation Room, the Kremlin, like everybody has Windows. So here you go, like the most viewed photo ever. It's kind of weird to think about it.
That is. Charles O'Rear. I wonder what he's up to these days.
That's a very good question. We should follow up and see if he's shot some new photos. I also, we use Macs here at the office, and for Mavericks, the latest 10.8 or whatever it is for OS X, is a wave taken at Mavericks, the famous big wave surf place, destination, and that also looks to me kind of computer generated, because I think they played around with the color as well. But you got to think that has been seen by a lot of people as well.
Yeah.
It's weird. Maybe we should put some war photos in there and change the tide.
Oh gosh. No.
No. People want peaceful. In our ever-ending quest to end on a happy note, we have this. This was great. I don't know if you had a chance to watch this because
I did. I just watched it because I saw you posted it on
yeah,
Facebook.
I posted it on my Facebook page. So photographer Art Shea, who worked for Life for many years, his favorite subject was actually his wife. He was married to her for 67 years before she passed away from cancer. And it is just a lovely, lovely little piece. He's 91 years old. I think he's 92 now. Clearly loves his wife, clearly misses his wife, and has these great photos. And this is one of his wife and his kid that he said was like one of his favorites. Like, just makes you tear up a little bit.
It does. It did for me too. Very, very sweet.
Yeah. So check that one out. Art Shea. We have the link on the blog for you to watch it, or you can just Google it, Art Shea. But magnificent. And if you're in Chicago, the exhibit is up and running. I don't know how long it is going to be running for, but it's not in like some fancy museum or anything. It's just like in some floor of a building at a school there. So you'll be walking around desks looking at the photos if they let you in the first place. Somebody find out about this thing and let us know what's going on. But some really nice photography. Sarah, it's going to be 60 degrees tomorrow in New York City.
I can't wait.
Time to take some photos.
Yeah.
Maybe dust off a film camera or something.
Maybe so.
Maybe so. Well, you have a good weekend, Sarah.
Thank you so much. You too.
Thanks for everyone for watching another week of I Love Photography. You can always comment to us using the hashtag #ILovePhoto, which every week we seem to condense that down from a longer phrase. But this week it's hashtag #ILovePhoto. So for Sarah Jacobs, this is Alan Murabayashi signing off. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.